Okay, I modified some of the stream settings. Actually, no, just ended up modifying. I modified some settings, but only one that pertains to the actual bitrate of the stream, I think, because I noticed when I looked at the last one I did, it was a bit choppy. My internet is not the best, so anyway, I don't know, the quality might be kind of bad visually, but as long as it is smooth enough to be consistent in playback or in stream, whatever, that is probably what matters. So anyway, going to watch or give this a react. Gen Z, Steve Jobs tried to warn you. I've only seen about somewhere around this much of it. Anyway, or only seen around roughly somewhere around that much of it. So anyway, we're going to watch it. Or I'm going to watch it.
Recently I noticed that for whatever reason I can't seem to finish listening to a single song. And I don't know if this is just me, but it was upon my rediscovery of this thing that I realized that this might just be something that Steve Jobs was trying to warn us about nearly 20 years ago. Now, if you're between 18 to 30, I'm sure you'll remember exactly what this is. But for those of you that's younger, this is the iPod Shuffle. And its entire function was to shuffle songs you'd uploaded to the device on random. No music libraries, no choosing your favorite song or infinite numbers of playlists. It was literally just press and play. And you're probably thinking, well, what's the significance of some...
Just seeing the beginning of this video, I think, makes me want to get an iPod Shuffle. Just a little bit more, you know. You gotta maybe appreciate the simplicity of it, you know what I mean?
20-year-old music player that in 2025 has basically zero usability whatsoever. Well, truthfully, it has less to do with the actual product itself, and more so to do with the strange reason as to why Jobs was so adamant on making it to begin with. Back in 2001, Apple announced the release of a groundbreaking new device. Its new functionality that had never been seen before was brought about by one unique feature to the device that made it stand out among all other portable players at the time, aka its screen. Now, as I'm sure we all know, the iPod was a massive hit, with Apple selling over 400 million of them during its lifetime. But this brings about the question that why, 4 years later, in 2005, would Jobs choose to release a borderline shitter version of what made the iPod so great to begin with? The reason is, despite it being nearly 2 decades ago, Jobs saw the signs of an issue that we would eventually all face today. To the average consumer, having the choice of picking whatever song you wanted to hear anytime, anywhere in the world would be an amazing thing, right? Safe to say Jobs was somewhat skeptical about this. But to simply explain, let me first ask you this. When was the last time you found a song you'd never heard before, or one you hadn't heard in a long time, and it made you feel something? I'd like to bet that you can probably think of a time, but not very often. And perhaps today, to some more than others, that just seems normal. But to anyone that grew up in the age of the iPod, or particularly the iPod Shuffle, I'm sure that feeling is all that you can remember. You'd plug your headphones in and you'd press play, and it was serendipity, it was discovery, it was weirdly nostalgic. You got those goosebumps all over your body, you got that...
Real quick, do you remember the old iPod commercials that had the cartoon people dancing around or whatever? Kind of iconic, eh?
Nostalgic. You got those goosebumps all over your body, you got that rush to your head. But for whatever reason, today I just can't seem to replicate that feeling. I can't seem to listen to the entirety of any song without skipping to the next that I'd already lined up. And I can't listen to anything other than the 3 playlists that I have on repeat all the time. Now, I'm sure someone out there will be able to relate to this frustration, but I can't help thinking that perhaps in some way Jobs was trying to warn us of this. That as convenient and as exciting as it is to curate whatever you want to hear all the time, that comes at a cost that we never really expected.
It's kind of like, part of me wants to say the illusion of control, but that's not actually the proper way of explaining it. Is it that we think that with more control and features and usability, customizability, etc., would come better experiences, But is it possible, like, the old saying, less is more? Is it possible that that could be true, at least for this? Because I don't know that I exactly have all the same issues that he has with the modern way of consuming music. I do like the ability on the phone nowadays to have. It's nice to be able to have those curated playlists of different types of things that you got, and to be able to go on Spotify and search up a type of playlist and just kind of click on it, and it's hopefully more or less the kind of stuff you were looking for, and if not, then you just kind of move on, stuff like that. And I find I don't know, like, there are times where I might just kind of skip through songs and stuff like that and not listen to the end of it. But then there are other times where I think it does depend on the songs and what you're feeling that day, I guess. But is part of, maybe, if we were to dissect what he's talking about, is part of it the visual stimulation factor of, like, when you're on Snapchat, all the colors and buttons and things like that, and with some songs, like the visuals, like how on Snapchat for some songs there might be like an animated background, or even just having the cover art of a song. Is it possible that that leads to part of the overstimulation that the iPod Shuffle just kind of strips back, and it makes it like as kind of simplified as possible? I wouldn't mind one day, because I used to have an iPod Classic, I think was my first one, iPod Classic, a silver one. I wish I knew where it was, because I'd probably get it and modify it with, what is it, Rockbox or something like that, which just kind of allows you to easily put stuff on it. Probably would upgrade the hard drive, modify it, stuff like that. I have my iPod Shuffle over there somewhere. But anyway, and oh dude, the Apple Sync feature, I have a bad relationship with that thing. It's usually almost always been, it's more or less usually been an inconvenience more than a convenience. Like, I really don't like the last time I used it, because I tried to sync my iPod 3rd gen and just to get it up to date as much as I could or whatever, and it wiped it of all my old apps that I liked. Like, I like some of those old apps, like Glass Tower. It had, like, probably had the Moron Test on there, like the OG stuff, you know what I mean? And it's like, or some of it anyway, and it's like, oh dude. And now it's, what sucks is, unless you find some roundabout way, it's like some of that stuff is just kind of gone, I think. Like, I don't know how much of those apps exist on the modern app store, and I don't even know if you could get it anymore on the older iPhones, or not iPhones, well, I guess to a degree maybe that, but the older iPods without, or the older iPod Touches without getting an old version of the iOS store and then trying to find it via your purchase history. But I'd have to find the password to my old email or whatever to be able to reset the password on my old Apple account or something like that, and then maybe I'd be able to do it. Either that, or you maybe just jailbreak your old iPod, maybe. Like, jailbreaking would be an option, but if you do that, that is on you. Don't take this, like, I'm not going to tell you to jailbreak your iPod. If you do that, that's your choice. But anyway, just in terms of the options that are available to try to, like, if I were to try to get those old apps that I had, in like ownership, whether they were free apps or apps that I had purchased with, like, mom or dad's card or whatever back in the day. It's just like the difficulty of trying to go back and get the old stuff now. Anyway, so the old iPods and stuff, there's some good times with that. Just like having the iPod Classic in my pocket with those old Apple earbuds, I think, while cutting the lawn, listening to like some Queen music, like the band Queen. Anyway, cutting the lawn. There's some times,
Limited life. Life can be
Really expected.
very limited life. Life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact, and that is everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you.
Things feel dull. Songs feel stale. There's no spike in serotonin when you're listening to the exact same song you've heard on repeat over and over for the past week. Now, I'm not attempting to be one of those gurus that says that you should get rid of your phone and carry around this shitty thing or some notebook to help save your attention span, because let's be real, which fucker's doing that? But recently, in light of this whole situation, I began doing something that I felt pretty compelled to share. Because for the first time in a very long time, I finally had that feeling again. Not just once, but multiple times. It was a regular thing. And it all came down to one rule. No matter if it's a song I haven't heard in a long time or it's one that I absolutely love, I cannot press skip. And look, those of you that watch this channel know that I'm not about giving some shitty tips that you're never actually going to use. But without risk of becoming too nuanced, I think this sums up more than just why songs don't feel the same anymore. You know, when I look back, especially recently, I've always chosen to press skip. No matter if it's an awkward situation or like an uncomfortable truth, I've always found the option to just press skip.
So this is kind of, it's the concept of like, is this the reality of when you try to just search for the dopamine hit with finding that certain type of song, that do you get addicted to looking for that dopamine hit, so do you get addicted to hitting the skip button? Is that kind of the analysis here?
And at first that was fine, it was like a cheat code or something. But now everything just feels dull. It doesn't feel good or bad, it just feels static.
Maybe an interesting comparison is like if you have a car that has a CD player in it still, you are probably more likely to listen to each song on the CD one after another, like as it progresses through the CD, resets, progresses through the CD. You're probably more likely to just listen to all of the songs without skipping through it than if you're listening to it on your phone or something. Now, granted, you could probably press like the skip button on your steering wheel if your steering wheel has that. Or even if your phone is Bluetooth to your car, you could probably just press the skip button on your wheel. But I feel like in the car is a setting where you're more likely to just kind of passively or semi-passively just listen to all the songs and be less likely to skip. Or maybe if you're out for a run or something, but then it depends, because if you have the earbud, you might just like tap and get it to skip that way.
No. Or bad, it just feels... But now everything just feels dull. It doesn't feel good or bad, it just feels static. No. And I'm not naive to think that I'm special in any way, that this is obviously a problem that lots of people face. But there's never really an explanation as to why. Which is why I think today more than ever, the shuffle is so significant. And no, I'm not trying to overanalyze or anything here, but to me, the shuffle was a philosophy curated into existence in a time where it didn't really make sense. It's only now, when every segment of our lives are perfectly adjustable, perfectly customizable to our every single need to make us feel comfortable.
The shuffle is also probably born out of the desire to make everything as small and as compact and as portable as possible while still performing the desired function. Because at that point you're getting down to like, okay, what's the most minimalist setup you could have for a music player in the smallest form factor while still being like relatively usable, right? And so this like just being this little clipped thing, but still having the basic controls. I don't know, knowing or the vibe you get from Steve Jobs is it might have had a philosophy attached, and if he is more of the artist type, which I get that vibe that Steve Jobs is more of the artist type than being like more of the engineer type, then it's fair to say it probably had a philosophy attached to its design, right?
That we appreciate how important letting go of control of everything really is. Of just discovering, of just letting things happen. Now look, if you disagree, please let me know in the comments. I'll be right there. But rumour has it a lot of you watching aren't even subscribed. So if you could please do that, that would mean a hell of a lot. But of course, remember to pop a gingy. Stop pressing that skip. And you'll be alright.
So I think that there is merit to that advice of stop pressing the skip button, because if you kind of, is it fair to say that you kind of get climatized to what you do? In other words, like you build habits and stuff based off of what you do. So is it fair to say that if you are skipping through songs. You're going to get used to doing that and continue doing that and maybe do it more often. Whereas it's kind of like, it's almost kind of like breaking an addiction or breaking a habit on like a micro scale, where it's like, just don't skip the song. And you might be like, oh, but I really want to skip the song. This song isn't doing it for me or whatever. It ain't that song I'm looking for. So it might be kind of tough to just sit through it. It's like maybe a modern example as well as like YouTube ads, and like the desire to like, skip through the ad as quickly as possible, and how a minute long ad or a minute of a series of ads that takes like 1 minute front to back to get through all those chunks of ads before you could continue watching your YouTube video again, how that 1 minute of ad watching time might feel like so long or whatever. But it's like back in the cable TV days, how long were commercial breaks? Like 3 minutes? You know what I mean? And you can skip those. You could go to a different channel, but if you want to watch your show, keep watching your show, then you'd have to wait through the commercial. Unless like you had a PVR and you recorded it and you fast forwarded through it later. But if you're watching just like, if you're channel surfing, you're watching live, you got to just sit through the ad. You got to just sit through the ad. Or you got to go to a different show and watch that and then come back later, try to time it roughly to when you think that the commercials are going to be over, and that's just life, right? There's something to be said for this analysis, though, of like the state of affairs that we're in right now, and like just kind of the state of our mentality towards things. Because I feel like I've noticed this the last little chunk of time. I don't know exactly how long. Is it last half a year? Is it last couple months? Is it last couple years? Whereas, is it fair to say that I've kind of felt maybe a little bit numb sometimes when it comes to the consumption of media or just my time? Like, is life feeling kind of like more of a routine blur? Like so many things are kind of blurring together and so much is just kind of blah, you know what I mean? And is part of that just kind of the state of life that we're in right now, where it's like if you're kind of more getting into adult life, you're kind of used to like your work routine, and then what do you do after that? Do you just like kind of scroll your phone? Do you just watch YouTube? Do you just like, do more work or get distracted while attempting to initially start doing work, and then you get distracted by YouTube or whatever? That's kind of more my story, probably pretty often. But like, how much of it is just kind of like this blob of a schedule where everything just kind of blurs together? And it's like, what did life used to be like before this, smartphone culture of everything blurring together, and this, continual, in some cases maybe sludge of content, like this constant drip feed of content, whether it's YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Netflix, whatever it is. And it's like, what I'm kind of feeling lately, this idea is coming to mind of like, there's too much to consume. There's too much content to consume. Like, you can't consume it all. Like, you could try if you wanted to, but that's probably not good or healthy. Probably not something that you should do. And it would, like, there's probably more content than there is days in the average person's life expectancy now. And not all the content's good either, Like, it's not all good for you, I would assume. And so it's like, if you're trying to like, have you noticed this on YouTube lately, where you just kind of be scrolling through the feed, and it's almost like now I'm kind of just like adding stuff to playlists sometimes that I might get to watching later, but I don't feel that there's enough time to watch it all now, and so you're just kind of archiving stuff and not even necessarily always watching all the stuff that looks interesting. Like, do you feel like there's just kind of this content overload lately? And I don't know that it always used to feel like that, but at the same time, I also maybe used to have more free time. Maybe. I could be a little bit out to lunch. Well, no, because in high school I didn't always have as much free time, at least not in the junior years of high school. But yeah, like, how have things changed? And so videos like this maybe kind of help us to kind of self-check and analyze how things have changed. But yeah. So what did you guys think of that? Like that video, that little quick